There's a kind of danger that doesn't announce itself. It walks in wearing awareness, sensitivity, and charm. It says all the right things, looks directly into your soul, and mirrors the parts of you you've spent years hoping someone would finally see. That's what makes it so hard to name. The most dangerous red flag doesn't come waving. It comes disguised as understanding. Think of the Trojan horse, a beautiful gift rolled through the gates, welcomed with relief. Inside, invasion waits patiently. We often do the same with people who reflect our inner ache back to us. They seem like deliverance, but they might be carrying the very pattern we swore we'd never repeat. This is how the cycle begins, not through deceit, but through resonance. You feel safe because they recognize your pain. You feel seen, even redeemed. But beneath that warmth, your nervous system is already negotiating, quietly trying to decide if this is safety or déjà vu. Jung would call this the beginning of a projection. The psyche sends out its hidden parts, the anima, the soul image, and waits to see if they'll come home loved or broken. Every man carries an inheritance he didn't choose. Some of it is wisdom, some of it is wound. What we fall for often exposes the difference. When charm feels like peace, it's usually camouflage. When someone's self-awareness feels intoxicating, it may be the lure of control disguised as intimacy. And when we ignore the faint unease in our gut, we're not naive. We're repeating what was once familiar enough to feel like home. The stakes are higher than they seem. Recognizing this pattern early isn't about distrusting others. It's about deciding whether you'll evolve or recycle the same inherited pain. It's the quiet fork in the road between consciousness and compulsion. The Trojan horse moment of a man's emotional life. You've probably lived it before. That strange mix of fascination and unease. The mind says, finally, and the body whispers, careful. The tension between those two voices, reason and intuition, is where most stories of heartbreak begin. Tonight, we'll unpack what makes this red flag so invisible. Not by hunting narcissists or diagnosing exes, but by turning the light inward, to the mechanism that turns attraction into entrapment. The very same force that, when understood, can also turn suffering into wisdom. Stay until the midpoint. That's where we'll uncover the pattern most men miss, the one that flips the script from being captured by the mirror to seeing what's been mirrored all along. For now, just breathe and notice. When someone sees you perfectly too soon, what part of you feels relief, and what part goes quiet? Sometimes, that silence is the sound of an old gate opening. It begins softly. A look that lingers a bit longer than most. A conversation where you feel strangely understood. The kind of empathy that feels like relief after years of being misread. You tell yourself, finally, someone gets it. But that sentence is where the trouble starts. The wound beneath it is ancient, a compulsive need to be understood. For many men, that ache traces back to childhood, when emotional presence was conditional. To be seen, you had to perform calmness, competence, or charm. Jung would call that the early split of the psyche, the creation of the persona, the mask you wear to survive, and the exile of the shadow, the parts you bury because they once caused pain. When you meet someone who seems to read both, you don't just see them, you see possibility. You project your hidden self, hoping it will be accepted this time. That's where the mirror appears. On the surface, it looks like empathy. Beneath it, it's a perfect reflection of your unmet needs. Neuroscience gives this phenomenon a biological frame. Mirror neurons. They're the cells that let us feel another person's emotion as if it were our own. In healthy connection, they create attunement, but in toxic dynamics, they become a trap. You bond not through truth, but through perceived similarity. You attach to the reflection, not the reality. The more mirrored you feel, the less you actually see. That's the paradox. Someone can echo your language of pain so precisely that it bypasses your skepticism. The rhythm of emotional mirroring, finishing your sentences, sharing your wounds, offering instant resonance, feels intimate, but it's data collection. The psyche mistakes recognition for safety, and your nervous system follows suit, relaxing in the presence of familiarity. It doesn't know yet that familiarity is the bait. Listen closely to the early signs. Rapid emotional mirroring, exaggerated vulnerability, stories that align too neatly with your own. The instant soul connection that feels like coming home. None of these are proof of danger on their own, but together, They reveal a pattern. Empathy, when used without integrity, can be a weapon, not to comfort, but to disarm. A man once wrote online about this exact snare. He described meeting a woman who seemed to see through him. Their first conversation stretched through the night. She repeated his phrases, matched his tone, cried at his stories. By dawn, he felt reborn. Weeks later, when control replaced warmth, he realized that being seen had been the hook, not the healing. The reflection had been a replica of his own longing. Jung warned that we don't really fall in love. We fall into projection. The psyche seeks wholeness, and when it spots its missing pieces in someone else, it rushes to merge. That rush can feel spiritual. But it's often the shadow begging for integration. The danger isn't in being deceived. It's in confusing reflection with resonance. Empathy is sacred when it's earned. When it's instant, it deserves patience. Real understanding unfolds slowly. It survives friction and difference. False mirrors, no matter how luminous, shatter the moment reality asks for depth. The mirror that lies doesn't want truth. It wants worship. And the more we crave to be seen, the easier we are to capture through that craving. The red flag in this first stage is not the other person's behavior. It's our hunger for recognition that blinds us to what's missing. So pause here. Notice the last time someone's empathy felt like a spell. Did you feel calm or did you feel high? There's a difference. One steadies your breath, the other steals it. The next chapter reveals why that high feels so binding, why chemistry can feel like destiny, yet function like withdrawal. The mirror seduces, but the real control hides in the rhythm that follows. After the mirror has reflected your hidden self, something else quietly begins to take shape. The warmth that once felt like safety can start to sting. Subtle tests appear. A question framed to unsettle. A silence just long enough to feel urgent. A compliment paired with critique. The nervous system, still lulled by the mirror's resonance, interprets these small shocks as significance rather than manipulation. The underlying driver is fear. Fear of unpredictability, fear of exposure, fear of being unseen again. Both parties, knowingly or not, begin seeking safety through control. The person across from you may not name it as strategy. They simply want predictability. You respond in kind, craving certainty after the mirror's promise. And so, a loop begins. Neuroscience explains why this loop can feel irresistible. Dopamine and oxytocin surge not just with affection, but with unpredictability. When warmth is punctuated by tension, the relief of reconciliation is physiologically addictive. Chemistry, as we call it, often conceals this cycle of withdrawal and reward. It masquerades as connection, but functions like a soft tether, anchoring you through fleeting highs and abrupt withdrawals. We see this dynamic in culture as well. Take the teacher in Whiplash, whose abuse is mistaken for mentorship. The student craves approval and growth, but what binds him is the thrill of unpredictability, the adrenaline of tension followed by release. In intimate relationships, a similar pattern unfolds. Moments of intensity, unpredictably punctuated by attention or withdrawal, create attachment loops the nervous system interprets as meaning and love. Diagnostic signals can be subtle but consistent. You feel adrenaline spikes after tension or conflict. You find yourself craving closure, even when it's exhausting. You forgive too quickly because the relief is chemically reinforcing. What feels like passion is often a cycle of regulation disguised as intimacy. The danger in this stage is that the bond appears voluntary and mutual, yet is anchored in the chemistry of relief rather than choice. Behind every manipulative dynamic lies a brain mistaking chaos for meaning and a heart mistaking intensity for love. Pause and sense the pattern. Consider a relationship where highs and lows left you both exhilarated and exhausted. The tension may have felt like growth, but the nervous system was learning dependency, not security. The high of connection can be addictive, but the person delivering it may have little intention of nurturing you beyond the pattern itself. 2 topics from now, we will test this understanding against a survivor's story. We'll see how these subtle dynamics, invisible to conscious awareness, can repeatedly draw men into the same trap. For now, notice the sensation in your chest as you recall moments of intensity that left you both exhilarated and unsettled. The body remembers before the mind does. The quiet tension beneath attraction, is rarely harmless. It is often the shadow of control disguised as connection. The next chapter will reveal why, even after recognizing this cycle, many men continue to choose the same pain, signing the same contract with their nervous system over and over. Even when the mirror has revealed itself and the subtle control is visible, many men find themselves returning to the same pattern. The repetition isn't coincidence. It is a contract written long before conscious choice, inked in the nervous system and the hidden architecture of the psyche. Jung called this the shadow marriage, a bond not to a person, but to unfinished emotional business. Freud framed it as repetition compulsion, the unconscious insistence on recreating unresolved pain until it is understood. The wound is familiar. You seek resolution in someone else because the nervous system remembers only the familiarity of certain dynamics. Safety is coded not as calm, but as the predictable tension you once endured. The attraction is not to the individual before you. It is to the echo of what your inner self has been trying to complete for years. Each repeated relationship is an attempt to reconcile a past that was never fully acknowledged, an invitation to finish a story without rewriting the ending. A patient described repeatedly dating partners who were controlling in subtle, almost invisible ways. Each time the pattern replayed. Initial fascination, emotional mirroring, followed by tension and the pursuit of approval. Only when therapy brought awareness to the father wound did he begin to see the pattern. The nervous system, he realized, was confusing familiarity with safety. His attachment was to the old, unresolved dynamic, not the new partner. The twist is subtle but profound. You are not addicted to the person you choose. You are addicted to the unfinished business your psyche is trying to complete. The repetition is a dialogue between the conscious self and the shadow, a silent insistence that until recognition occurs, the same terms will be signed in every new connection. Notice the sensation that arises when you recall your past attractions. There is a rhythm, a pull, a gravitational familiarity that feels almost magnetic. That magnetism is the shadow contract at work. It is not malevolence in the other, nor weakness in yourself. It is your system quietly following a script it learned long ago, seeking resolution in patterns that mirror early wounds. The path toward individuation asks for recognition first, then choice. Awareness allows the nervous system to distinguish safety from familiarity. Until that distinction is made, even the most conscious man may find himself circling the same pain, repeating the same unconscious contract. The next chapter examines another layer, how charm, idealization, and the carefully constructed persona disguise the shadow, making the familiar pattern appear new, safe, and even admirable. That is where fascination transforms into entrapment, and the mask begins its work. By the time the shadow contract has been engaged, another layer quietly takes over, the persona. The persona is the mask we present to the world, shaped by both survival and aspiration. Jung described it as a necessary interface between self and society, a filter that allows function and acceptance. But when that mask becomes weaponized, charm and idealization conceal intention. The mask doesn't just hide the shadow, it actively invites trust, admiration, even awe. The fascination is immediate. High-value energy, refined speech, moral confidence, even spiritual insight draws attention and admiration. It feels magnetic because it resonates with longing, the desire to meet someone competent, strong, and seemingly whole. Yet often, the charisma is a camouflage. The surface reflects mastery, while the hidden currents of control or unresolved shadow flow beneath. Look to myth for illustration. Narcissus fell not for a person, but for a reflection. The mirror image captivated him, and in that fascination he lost perspective. Similarly, a persona, shimmering, polished, admired, can draw you in, not because of depth, but because it mirrors an ideal that feels safe, desirable, or heroic. The attraction is real, yet the substance is incomplete. Subtle diagnostic signals emerge. Over-polished speech that glosses over discomfort, moral superiority paired with selective empathy, spiritual or philosophical language that impresses rather than connects. These are not proof of badness. They are cues of camouflage. The mask is holding a shape, and admiration for the mask can become a silent agreement to overlook what lies beneath. Fascination alone is insufficient evidence of safety. Attraction is amplified by idealization, which can hide recurring patterns and activate the shadow contract. The charm makes the pull irresistible, even when your inner nervous system flickers unease. The collapse of the mask is inevitable because no projection, no matter how convincing, can fully sustain the image it promises. When the persona can no longer hold the ideal, disillusionment follows. That collapse exposes not just the other's shadow, but the parts of your own psyche that were drawn into the reflection. Pause and sense it. Remember moments when admiration and fascination felt intoxicating, but subtle dissonances began to surface. The allure is not inherently harmful. The danger emerges when charm covers patterns that echo unresolved wounds. Fascination is the bridge that carries the shadow across the threshold. The next chapter will examine the moment the mask finally breaks, and what that disillusionment teaches about perception, projection, and choice. The mask can hold only for so long. Charm, idealization, and the polished persona eventually encounter friction, the ordinary realities of conflict, imperfection, and human limitation. When the mask fractures, the illusion dissolves, and the emotional shock can feel catastrophic. Yet, the pain is rarely about losing the other person. It is about losing the image you built in your mind, the reflection that felt like completion, certainty, or salvation. Neuroscience offers a window into this experience. During intense emotional shock, the amygdala fires while the prefrontal cortex, the seat of reasoning, loosely decouples. Logic suspends itself. Emotional pain takes the foreground. You are left with a strange dissonance. The body aches, the mind races, and the heart grieves not the person, but the possibility that was never real. Stories from forums echo this dynamic. One man reflected on a breakup that left him shaken. The hardest part, he admitted, was not the absence of the partner, but confronting his own complicity in the illusion he had helped maintain. He realized he had been in love with reflection, resonance, and projection, not the true contours of another human being. Disillusionment, while painful, is also clarifying. It is the doorway to perception, unclouded by projection. It allows you to see your own nervous system's patterns, the shadow contracts that had previously gone unnoticed, and the ways charm and idealization misdirected attention from reality. A quiet practice can anchor this insight. Take a moment to write. What did you actually lose, and what had you projected onto the other? Notice the difference between tangible absence and imagined ideal. This exercise does not erase grief, but it separates it from illusion. The distinction itself is a form of regulation, a subtle step toward integration. Through this collapse, the psyche learns its own limits, and the heart begins to recognize its own agency. Pain becomes a teacher rather than a trap, and the reflection that once captivated can now serve as a mirror for self-awareness. The nervous system begins to register safety not in the intensity of connection, but in the clarity of perception. The journey does not end here. Understanding the collapse prepares the way for recognizing a deeper truth. The most dangerous red flag is often within ourselves. It is the unconscious pull toward patterns we are ready to repeat, the shadow we have yet to integrate. That is the terrain of the final chapter. The most dangerous red flag is rarely out there. It lives quietly in patterns we fail to notice in ourselves. It is the unconscious pull toward repetition, the magnetism of familiar pain, the unexamined shadow that guides choices without consent. In myth, Icarus flew too close to the sun, not because the sun was cruel, but because he lacked awareness of his own wings. In life, the warning is often internal, a rhythm, a compulsion, a draw toward patterns we have yet to integrate. Awareness transforms danger into insight. Recognizing the pull toward repetition does not breed suspicion. It cultivates discernment. The inner red flag is a signal, not a verdict. It marks where attention is needed, where the nervous system seeks familiar discomfort, and where the shadow remains unexamined. Reflection becomes a protective practice. What have you repeated without conscious choice? Where has longing, fascination, or the desire to be seen carried you into predictable patterns? Naming these tendencies is not shameful. It is clarifying. Awareness is the first step toward autonomy. It allows you to respond rather than react, to choose rather than be swept along by unconscious force. The final insight is subtle but profound. Danger is inseparable from growth. The red flag within is both warning and guide. When you notice it, you can pause, breathe, and see clearly. You can break the cycle not by fleeing, but by acknowledging the shadow, integrating its message, and stepping into relationships and choices with grounded presence. If this resonates, leave a signal in one line below. Not a story, not a confession, just a mark that you saw the pattern for what it is. Each signal helps others recognize what they might otherwise overlook. Recognition is contagious, and clarity can ripple quietly through shared understanding. The red flag is not in the other. It is in the pattern, the echo of past wounds, the hidden script of the psyche, the call to awareness we carry until we finally answer. Peace is not boring. It is the nervous system remembering safety. Presence is not weakness. It is the shadow finally held in light. And the most dangerous red flag, once recognized, becomes the guide toward individuation, discernment, and emotional sovereignty.